Huggy Wuggy did not just come back in Chapter 5. He came back to show us that almost everything we thought about him was too small. For years, a lot of people saw Huggy as the first big monster, the first chase, the blue thing with teeth, the thing that fell at the end of Chapter 1 and maybe died. But Chapter 5 takes that simple idea and tears it apart. The official setup for Broken Things says the whole chapter throws you deeper into the factory with Huggy Wuggy hunting you, and that is exactly how it starts. The moment the chapter begins, the game answers one huge question without waiting around. Huggy survived. He is alive, he is angry, he is moving through the labs like a living trap, and this time, he is not just a jump scare. He becomes one of the saddest parts of the whole story. And that matters, because Chapter 5 is not really a simple Huggy is back moment. It is more like the game looking right at the player and saying, you saw the monster before, but now you are going to see what was done to the monster. You are not just running from him. You are running through the place that shaped him. You are moving through the rooms where Playtime Co. pushed living toys into obedience, fear, pain, and stress. So when Huggy bursts into this chapter, the point is not only that he survived the fall from Chapter 1, the point is that the factory still owns the shape of his pain. And the deeper you go, the more you understand that Huggy is not just a killer in a hallway. He is one of the clearest signs of what this company built. Chapter 5 turns him from the face of the game into proof of the game's worst truth. The opening proves all of that in a very cruel way. You are already trapped in the labs after Chapter 4, and then alarms go off and Huggy starts smashing at the window in front of you. He bangs on the glass, gets one arm through, bends the door down, and the chase begins right away. There is no friendly return, no pause, no cute fake out. He is already on you. The whole thing feels personal. He pushes through ruined halls, tight gaps, broken belts, vents, and collapsed spaces like he has one job and one job only. Get to you before you get any deeper. That opening also quietly says something important. Huggy is not weak, not half dead, not a broken leftover from Chapter 1. He is still strong enough to tear through barriers, keep up with the player, and force the whole chapter to begin under pressure. Even outside of lore, the game uses him as the engine that kicks off Broken Things. Inside the story, that tells us the factory's old security monster is still active and still terrifying. Then the chapter makes things worse in a smart way. It does not only let Huggy chase you, it lets him take something from you. In the early stretch of Chapter 5, after multiple chase beats, he breaks into the elevator sequence and ends up stripping the player of the upgraded grab pack tools. That is a small gameplay move on the surface, but in story terms, it makes Huggy feel even more dangerous. He is not just a roaring animal smashing walls. He is a force that can reduce you, corner you, and leave you less ready than before. It also adds to the feeling that the deeper labs are Huggy's space, not yours. The chapter is official about one thing from the start. This is the wrong side of the factory, the prototype's domain, and Huggy is the first thing that makes you feel what that means. The player does not enter Chapter 5 as a hunter. The player enters as prey. But one of the most important lines in the whole chapter comes a bit later, and it changes how we read Huggy's return. When the prototype approaches Chum and the player is hidden, he says his hunters will pursue 1,170. That number matters. 1,170 is Huggy Wuggy. So now we learn two huge things at once. First, the prototype is actively sending others after Huggy. Second, Huggy is not moving through the labs as a loyal pet, following orders step by step. He is someone the prototype is trying to track. That means Huggy is not just the chapter's monster in front of us, he is also part of a bigger chase we do not fully see. The prototype wants eyes everywhere, wants control, wants Poppy found, and at the same time, his hunters are after 1170. So Chapter 5 turns Huggy into something more complex than a guard dog. He is dangerous, yes, but he also looks like a loose piece inside a system built on fear and control. That one detail changes the feel of almost every Huggy scene after that. If the prototype's hunters are already pursuing him, then Huggy is not standing neatly inside the prototype's control. He is part of the mess, part of the disorder, a broken thing in a chapter literally called Broken Things. And the chapter leans into that by taking us into the section where the player starts seeing Huggy's memories. This is where the game stops asking, "Can you survive Huggy?" and starts asking, "What did they do to Huggy to make him this way?" That question is the heart of his Chapter 5 story. Not whether he can catch you, not whether he can scream louder than before, not whether he gets more scary animations. The heart of it is the memory machine, the conditioning rooms, the training, the pain, the fake cheerful voices, the stress tests, and the fact that behind the giant blue body is a creature that was pushed and pushed until violence became the language left to him. The first memory is one of the saddest because it is so fake and so calm on the surface. Huggy wakes up in a childlike room. Miss Gracie appears on a screen and talks to him in a bright, sweet voice like, "This is all normal, like this is care, like this is progress." She says they are proud of him. She says he is going to make the friends happy. Then she starts a sorting game. Blocks fall, shapes go into matching places, simple colors, simple rules, childlike language. It looks almost harmless until you realize what the game is really doing. It is not teaching joy, it is not teaching play, it is measuring obedience. It is shaping behavior. It is checking whether this huge living toy will do exactly what he is told. And if he makes mistakes, the chapter makes it clear that punishment is built in. The setup is bright, but the feeling under it is dark. Huggy is being trained the way you train a tool, not cared for like a living being. That first memory also tells us a lot about why Huggy feels so different in Chapter 5 compared to Chapter 1. In the old days, Huggy mostly felt like a big threat at the end of a corridor. Here, the game lets you stand inside the system that built his behavior. The nice voice, the fake praise, the basic tasks, the way the room talks to him like he is both a child and a machine, all of that, says Playtime Co., did not just make a mascot body and hope it worked. They tried to engineer a mind that would obey. Even the tape tied to Experiment 1170 talks about progress, obedience, and aggression under stress. So the game is not hiding the pattern. Huggy was considered a success because he was smart enough to function and obedient enough to use. But the moment stress rose high enough, that success started to crack. Chapter 5 uses these memories to show that the monster from the lobby was also a product report, a conditioning project, and a living victim pushed through repeated control systems. The second memory pushes this idea further. In a dance room, Huggy is again forced through another fake happy exercise. Music plays. He has to move and stop on cue. It feels like one more piece of mental training, one more forced routine dressed up as play. Even outside the direct transcript, guides covering this section describe it as a memory where you dance when the music is active and stop on the Huggy symbol when the music ends. That sounds simple, but the pattern matters more than the specific task. The factory keeps using childish games to press a living experiment into control. It is always framed as learning, always framed as good behavior, always framed with cheerful language, but the purpose under it is domination. Every memory says the same quiet thing in a different way. Playtime Co. took beings that could feel, remember, react, and suffer, then wrapped abuse in bright colors so it would look like progress. And then the third memory is where the mask fully falls off. Huggy wakes up on a stretcher. A security staffer is transporting 1,170 into conditioning. The code is spoken out with emotion names. The room is not a game space anymore. It is a control chamber. Huggy is set up in front of a screen again. Miss Gracie keeps talking, and the whole scene feels like an attempt to sand down his will until he becomes useful on command. But this time the process breaks. Huggy does not settle. He snaps. He tears out wires. He breaks the screen. He forces himself free. He smashes the window. Red smoke starts filling the room, and the handler panics. Then, Huggy chases Lewis through the conditioning hall and kills him. That is a huge moment, because it shows violence not as a random evil trait that appeared from nowhere, but as the breaking point of a creature under heavy stress, control, and fear. It does not make the killing good. It makes it understandable in the worst possible way. This is why Chapter 5 changes Huggy so much. Before this chapter, a lot of fans could talk about him like the classic first boss. Big teeth, long limbs, fast chase, end of story. After Chapter 5, that reading feels too flat. The game goes out of its way to show that Huggy was treated like a successful result only as long as he fit the company's needs. The second he shows stress, the second he resisted, the second his own reaction became too hard to control, the bright lessons gave way to panic, gas, and force. And that makes his present-day behavior more tragic. He is still dangerous, still violent, still capable of killing, but now those actions sit inside a system of abuse the player directly witnesses. The game is not saying Huggy is innocent. The game is saying he was made into this. That is a very different thing. The chapter gets even smarter when it brings present-day Huggy back right after the memories. The machine ends, the player returns to the now, and Huggy bursts through again. He chases through vents, crashes through walls, and keeps the pressure on. But then one tiny beat changes everything. A projector turns on and shows Kissy Missy. Huggy stops. Even if it is only for a brief second, he reacts. That matters so much. It shows there is still some line inside him that leads to recognition, memory, attachment, or at least instinctive response. And the chapter does not leave that as a one-off trick. It comes back to it later in the most important Huggy scene of the game. So when Huggy pauses for that projection, the story is quietly telling us that the creature we feared in chapter 1 still has emotional hooks inside him. He is not just empty rage in blue fur. Something in him still answers to Kissy. That one detail is easy to miss if you only think about the chase. But if you think about story, it is massive. Huggy is a creature the factory tried to condition through games, pain, voices, and gas. He is a creature the prototype's hunters are pursuing. He is a creature running loose in the worst part of the factory. And yet, the image of Kissy can still stop him for a moment. That tells us the experiment did not erase everything. The company could twist him, weaponize him, and stress him into violence, but some softer links still survived. Chapter 5 even names the reunion scene his other half, which is not subtle at all. The game wants you to see Kissy not as a random second Wuggy, but as the one being who can still reach him in a way nobody else can. Before the final Huggy moment though, the chapter keeps building the world around him. You go through Lily Lovebraid's section, find Poppy and Kissy trapped, hear Poppy apologize, get dragged through the tea party, and finally meet the prototype face to face. This matters for Huggy because chapter 5 is showing us the ruler of this nightmare right before Huggy reaches his own ending beat. During the tea party, the prototype says he sent the orphans to a better place, which is the chapter's horrible way of revealing that his idea of care is mixed up with death and control. He also threatens the player with being turned wrong side out, echoing the disturbing opening commercial, where the cheerful toy ad keeps glitching into the prototype's mutilation imagery, and the phrase about being wrong side out. So by the time we get back to Huggy later, the chapter has already made one thing clear. The prototype does not heal things in any real way. He remakes them, uses them, controls them, and when needed, destroys them. That matters because a lot of what happens to Huggy in the final act can be understood through that exact pattern. The prototype wants a world he controls. He wants Poppy back. He wants outsiders crushed. He wants the factory to stay inside his idea of heaven. And the chapter already tells us his hunters are pursuing 1,170. So when Huggy comes back again near the tram, the game is not just setting up one last cool chase. It is bringing two broken systems together. On one side, you have Huggy, the old security monster, the abused experiment, the loose piece. On the other side, you have the prototype, the puppet master who talks like he cares but acts through fear, injury, and domination. The chapter is moving them toward each other, and the player ends up right in the middle. The last Huggy chase before the tram is short but important. He slams the player into a window, chases through narrow shelves, hammers on doors, and keeps moving fast even after everything we have already seen. The game does not suddenly make him gentle because we learned his past. That is what makes the writing stronger. Huggy stays dangerous. He stays scary. The chapter never asks you to forget that he can kill. What it does ask is that you finally see more than the surface. And then, right after all that panic, the game gives us the scene that changes Huggy's whole arc. Kissy is there. She calls out to him in her own way. She limps over. She looks worried, not hostile. He looks at her. He steps closer. She studies his injuries, she reaches toward him. He pulls back at first, then lets her touch him. His expression softens. He begins to reach back. For one small moment, the chapter stops being a horror chase and becomes something almost painfully human. That is why people keep talking about this moment after finishing chapter 5, because the game does not make the reunion loud. It makes it fragile. It is not a giant speech, not a long cutscene full of exposition. It is just behavior, body language, hesitation, recognition, pain, care. Huggy does not roar and attack her. He does not ignore her. He does not rush the player instead. He is drawn into that moment with Kissy, and the transcript even describes his face turning into a soft smile. That is such a small detail, but it completely flips the old image of Huggy as only a murderous mascot. The chapter lets us see a version of him that can still connect, a version of him that can still be reached, a version of him that, for a second, is not trapped in chase mode, not trapped in obedience drills, not trapped in rage, just hurt and close to someone who matters to him. And then the prototype destroys it instantly. Huggy reaches out and he gets stabbed in the chest. The prototype drops in from above, throws Huggy aside, knocks Kissy down, and then stabs Kissy too as the two try to reach toward each other. This is the clearest direct answer to the title question. What happened to Huggy Wuggy in Poppy Playtime Chapter 5? He survived his old fall, returned as the chapter's first major threat, had his past exposed through the memory system, briefly found Kissy again, and then got impaled by the prototype at the exact moment he was reconnecting with her. That is the simple answer. But the simple answer does not carry the full weight of the scene. The real cruelty is timing. The game waits until Huggy shows the most softness he has ever shown, then kills the moment with sudden violence. That timing tells us a lot about the prototype too. He does not just stop threats. He crushes bonds, he breaks moments of care, he interrupts contact. If Huggy is a loose part of the system, then Huggy reconnecting with Kissy is dangerous in a way that goes beyond brute force. It means there are links inside the toys the prototype does not fully own. It means memory is still alive. It means his world is not as total as he wants it to be. So the stabbing does more than remove two possible enemies. It destroys a relationship, it destroys hope in front of the player, it sends the message that every soft thing in this place gets punished. That is why the scene hits so hard. It is not only violent, it is targeted. Now comes the big question everyone asks right after that scene. Did Huggy die? Chapter 5 does not fully lock that down on screen. The player is forced to run. The scene shows the impaling. It shows Huggy thrown down. It shows Kissy stabbed too. But the chapter does not stop so the player can stand over a body and get a clean answer. Even summary pages tied to the chapter describe Huggy and Kissy as presumed dead or as having fates left unknown because the game moves straight into the tram escape and then into the prototype's attack on the player. So the best fully honest answer is this. Chapter 5 shows Huggy taking what looks like a deadly chest stab from the prototype, but it does not give a final hard on-screen confirmation beyond that before the player flees. He is left in very bad shape, and the chapter wants you to fear the worst, but it also leaves just enough room for uncertainty. Even with that uncertainty though, the chapter already completes Huggy's emotional arc. That is what matters most. If he never returns, Chapter 5 has already given him a full tragic shape. He begins the series as the monster who introduces you to the true danger of the factory. He disappears in a fall. He becomes a question mark. Then, Chapter 5 brings him back, not just to scare you, but to reframe him. We see what obedience looked like. We see stress tests. We see punishment. We see the point where control broke. We see that Kissy still matters to him. We see that the prototype sees him as disposable. And we see his nearest thing to peace get cut short in one of the cruelest moments in the game. That is not a side character beat. That is a full tragedy. This is also why Chapter 5 is probably the most important Huggy chapter. Even though Chapter 1 introduced him, Chapter 1 gave him icon power, Chapter 5 gives him meaning. Before Broken Things, you could describe Huggy in a few easy words. Tall, blue, fast, teeth, security, chase. After broken things, those words are not enough. Now you have to add experiment, conditioning, stress response, loose target, memory, kissy, pain, reconnection, betrayal, impalement. That is a much bigger character. And the clever part is that the game does not change his past appearance, it changes our understanding. The same giant blue body from the lobby now carries more sadness because we know more about the mind and suffering behind it. Another reason this works so well is that Chapter 5 does not try to wash Huggy clean. That would have felt fake. The game never says he was secretly harmless, it never says the player imagined the danger, it never says all the violence was someone else. What it says instead is harder and better. Huggy can be dangerous and tragic at the same time. He can be the monster that hunts you and still be a victim of the same factory. He can kill and still have been twisted into what he became. He can terrify the player and still earn pity when the memories show what was done to him. That is more honest to the world of Poppy Playtime. These toys are not neat heroes and villains. They are broken lives shaped by a place that ruined everyone it touched. The wrong side out idea at the start of the chapter also fits Huggy's story better than it first seems. The commercial looks cute at first, then glitches into dissection, flesh, and the prototype's twisted version of play. The phrase about being wrong side out becomes a way of talking about this whole chapter. The factory keeps flipping things, toys into experiments, play into torture, safety into traps, care into control, home into prison, and with Huggy, Chapter 5 flips him too. He starts the chapter looking like the old outside image everyone knows, the monster chasing you through the halls. Then, the game turns him inside out for the player. It shows what is under that image. Not literally his body, his story, his damage, his last link to someone who cared about him. In that way, Huggy is one of the chapter's strongest examples of the whole broken things theme. I also think Chapter 5 quietly answers why Huggy feels more emotional here than before. The answer is not that he changed overnight. It is that the game finally lets us see the parts of him that were always possible but hidden from us. The player in Chapter 1 does not know the labs, the conditioning rooms, the red smoke routines, or the internal bonds between experiments. The player just sees a threat. In Chapter 5, once the world expands, Huggy expands with it. The player learns he is 1,170, learns he was treated as a successful outcome because of intelligence and obedience, learns that under stress he could become extremely aggressive, learns that he was pursued, learns that he can still react to Kissy. So maybe the better way to put it is not that Huggy changed, it is that our point of view changed enough to finally catch up with who he already was. There is also something very sad about where the game places his reunion with Kissy. It does not happen in a safe room, not in freedom, not after a rescue, not after healing. It happens in the middle of injury and pursuit. Kissy is limping, Huggy is damaged, the player is cornered, the prototype is near. Even their softest moment exists inside danger. That tells you everything about life in Playtime Co. Even love, memory, or comfort cannot appear without being hunted. That is why the scene feels so desperate. It is not a happy reunion cut short. It is two ruined beings almost finding each other again in a place built to make sure that can never last. And if you want the most direct answer possible, stripped down to plain language, it is this. Huggy Wuggy survives, Chapter 1, and is fully alive in Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. He attacks the player at the start, hunts him through the labs, and later steals away the player's upgraded tools. Chapter 5 then reveals his experiment number, 1,170, and shows memories of the cruel training and conditioning that shaped him. He is still dangerous, but the game also shows he can react to Kissy Missy and still has some emotional connection to her. Near the tram, Huggy and Kissy almost reconnect, but the prototype suddenly attacks and impales Huggy through the chest, then stabs Kissy too. After that, the player is forced to flee, so the chapter leaves Huggy's final condition unclear on screen, even though it looks extremely bad. That is what happened. But the longer answer is why that matters. It matters because Huggy is no longer just the mascot monster who started the series. He becomes one of the best examples of what Poppy Playtime is really about. Not only fear, not only puzzles, not only chases, It is about what happens when people with power turn living beings into products, then punish those products when they stop behaving like tools. The memories are not there only to deepen lore. They are there to make the player feel the cost. When Huggy kills Lewis in the conditioning wing, it is ugly and brutal. But the reason it lands is that the game has already shown us the fake lessons, the emotional pressure, the punishment, and the gas. So the violence becomes the final collapse of a system that was already violent long before Huggy broke free. That is also why the prototype killing Huggy feels different from any normal boss villain move. If the prototype only wanted power, he could still be read as a rebel king inside the factory. But Chapter 5 keeps showing that his version of saving things is full of ownership and cruelty. He talks about keeping everyone safe while hurting them. He talks about a better place while meaning death. He wants Poppy back, but damages her. He wants order, but rules through fear. So when he stabs Huggy at the very moment Huggy reaches back toward Kissy, it feels like a statement. The prototype does not really want healing, he wants submission. Huggy, as broken and violent as he is, still carries bonds the prototype cannot fully script. That makes him useful when he can hunt, but dangerous when he can feel. There's another layer too. The official material for Chapter 5 keeps calling Huggy the factory's security system. That label sounds simple, but after Chapter 5 it feels loaded. Security for whom? Security against what? In practice, security meant weaponizing a living experiment to control space, watch people, and stop movement. The chapter turns that label into something ugly. Huggy was not protecting children. He was part of a nightmare system. And yet the memories show he was trapped inside that role too. So he becomes both enforcer and prisoner, both symbol of the system and casualty of it. That is exactly the kind of contradiction Poppy Playtime likes when it is at its best. If Chapter 6 brings Huggy back again, there is room for that because the chapter does not give a clean corpse shot or a clean final confirmation. If Chapter 6 never brings him back, Chapter 5 still works because it already gave closure to the most important part of his story. So either way, Broken Things changes him for good. You cannot really go back to seeing Huggy as only the first chapter monster after this. The image is too different now. The smile at Kissy is too different. The conditioning room is too different. The line about hunters pursuing 1,170 is too different. The stab is too different. Everything about him gets heavier after Chapter 5. And maybe that is the saddest thing in the whole chapter. Huggy finally gets more story, more depth, more feeling, and more truth. But the moment he gets all of that is also the moment the game hurts him the most. He comes back alive only to prove how damaged he has always been. He becomes more than a monster, only to get struck down in the second he looks most alive inside. He gets closer to being understood, and then the chapter tears him away. That is why the answer to what happened to Huggy Wuggy in Chapter 5 is not just he got stabbed. That is the event. The real answer is that Chapter 5 revealed who Huggy really is, showed how the factory broke him, showed that Kissy could still reach him, and then used the prototype to crush that tiny spark right in front of us. So no, Huggy Wuggy's Chapter 5 story is not just a comeback. It is a reframe. It is a tragedy. It is a giant blue monster being turned inside out so the player can finally see the hurt under the teeth. It is the game taking its most famous face and saying the real horror was never only the chase. The real horror was what made the chase possible. And once you see that, once you see the games, the shocks, the gas, the conditioning room, the brief pause at Kissy's image, the soft smile, and the sudden stab from above, Huggy stops being just the thing that runs at you. He becomes one of the clearest warnings in the whole package. This place did not only build monsters, it broke living beings, and the monster was the shape of it. Watch the next video.